Robert, a renowned businessman, known for his ventures far and wide, is admired not only for his sharp business acumen, but also for his striking good looks. Charismatic and charming, he is the man every woman dreams of being with. Despite his success, Robert remains a bachelor, much to the chagrin of his mother, Madame Angela. Madame Angela, a dignified and caring woman, has been urging her son to settle down and start a family. She believes a stable family life is essential for his happiness and legacy. Yet, Robert always responds to her pleas with a light-hearted laugh, assuring her that he plans to settle down when the time is right. For now, however, he insists that his focus is on savoring his youth and enjoying the freedom that comes with it. Robert's lifestyle is the envy of many. He effortlessly attracts women, basking in the admiration he receives wherever he goes. One fateful afternoon, Robert decided to pay a visit to his mother, Madame Angela, at her cozy home. As he stepped through the door, she greeted him warmly, her face lighting up with a mixture of joy and curiosity. However, it wasn't long before her usual topic of concern came up again. "Robert," she began, her tone firm but caring, "please, it's time to choose one of the ladies as your wife. Stop playing around, you need to settle down and make me a grandmother. Is that too much to ask?" Robert chuckled softly, his signature charming smile spreading across his face. "Mom," he said, "I came here today to break some good news to you. I finally decided to get married." Madame Angela froze for a moment, stunned by his words. Then, unable to contain her excitement, she jumped to her feet, clapping her hands in joy. "Oh, thank God," she exclaimed, her voice filled with delight. "Finally, all my enemies will be put to shame. I will become a proud grandmother at last." She spun around in a little celebratory dance, her laughter filling the room. After a moment, she turned back to Robert, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "So, when are we visiting her family? I want these arrangements done quickly. I don't want anything to go wrong or for you to change your mind." Robert smiled again, this time with a touch of tenderness. "Mom, I've already made up my mind. There's no going back on this. I love her dearly, and I'm ready for this step." Angela nodded, her face beaming with pride. "Oh, I must meet the woman who has captured your heart so completely. She must be someone truly special." Her enthusiasm filled the room with warmth, and as the two began discussing the next steps, Angela couldn't help but marvel at how her dream was finally coming true. For the first time in years, her persistent prayers seemed to have been answered, and she looked forward to meeting the woman who had finally brought her son to this life-changing decision. A few weeks later, Robert and his friends set out on a road trip to the neighboring city to visit his fiancée's family. Their convoy of sleek cars hummed along the highway, but partway through the journey, one of the cars broke down. Forced to stop, the group pulled over under the shade of a sprawling tree to wait while the issue was fixed. As they sat chatting and laughing to pass the time, a young girl approached them. She balanced a bucket filled with sachets and bottles of water on her head, her eyes bright with determination, despite her modest appearance. The girl greeted them politely and humbly asked if they could buy some water from her. James, one of Robert's closest friends, smiled warmly. "Oh, we just finished drinking some soft drinks, so I don't think any of us are thirsty," he said, pulling out his wallet. "But for your beauty, you deserve this." He handed her a couple of crisp notes. Robert laughed and shook his head. "James, the legendary Father Christmas," he teased. "You still give out money so easily without expecting anything in return. I hail you." The girl stood quietly, smiling shyly at their playful banter. Robert turned to her, his tone softening. "Damsel," he began, Have you ever thought about changing your environment? If you're interested, I can offer you a job that could transform not just your life, but your family's as well." Her smile widened, though it carried a hint of hesitation. "Yes, sir, I would love that," she replied. "But I didn't finish secondary school. My parents couldn't afford to send me." Robert waved her concern aside with a reassuring smile. "That doesn't matter. By the way, what's your name?" "My name is Hadar," she said, her voice soft but clear. Both Robert and James echoed in unison, "Hadar the beauty." Their playful tone made her laugh, easing her nervousness. Robert continued, "Don't worry about qualifications, Hadar. All you need to do is be willing to work hard and make yourself available. The rest is on me. This opportunity could change everything for you." Touched by his kindness, Hadar gratefully collected his contact details, thanking him profusely for the chance. Robert handed her some money for transportation, ensuring she had enough to reach him when the time came. As she walked away, her steps lighter with hope, Robert and his friends watched her disappear into the distance. A few months later, James paid Robert a visit at his office. As they delved into discussions about business strategies and upcoming ventures, Robert's phone buzzed. Seeing his wife Daniela's name on the screen, his face lit up with excitement. "Excuse me, James," he said, picking up the call. "Hello, sweetie, how are you?" On the other end of the line, Daniela's voice trembled with joy. "Robert, guess what?" Laughing, Robert replied, "You know I'm terrible at guessing. Just tell me." "I'm 3 weeks pregnant, Robert," Daniela exclaimed. "I'm pregnant." The words hit Robert like a burst of sunshine. He jumped to his feet, unable to contain his excitement. "Oh my goodness, I'm going to be a father," he shouted, pacing the office. "My mom's dream has finally come true." Daniela laughed, her voice full of happiness. "I'm so excited. Robert, please come home early today. This calls for a celebration." "Absolutely, sweetie," Robert promised before ending the call, his grin stretching ear to ear. Just as he was about to share the news with James, the receptionist walked in. "Sir, there's someone here to see you," she informed him. "Send her in," Robert said without hesitation. A moment later, Hadar entered the office, dressed in her best attire. Her radiant beauty and confident stride immediately caught their attention, momentarily interrupting their conversation. James, trying to gather himself, greeted her. "Hadar, I thought your parents weren't supportive of you coming to the city. What kept you from showing up all this time?" Hadar offered a polite smile. "I'm sorry for the delay. I had to make sure everything was in order before coming here." Robert, momentarily lost in thought as he admired her natural beauty, snapped back and smiled warmly. "Consider yourself employed, Hadar. Go take a seat at the reception, and I'll talk to you later." Grateful, Hadar nodded and thanked him before stepping out of the office. As soon as the door closed, James turned to Robert, narrowing his eyes. "I hope you're not thinking like a bachelor again. You're not just a married man, you're about to be a father." Robert burst into laughter, shaking his head. "James, relax. I'm married, yes, but what's wrong with appreciating beauty? I mean, look at her, so natural, so stunning. Honestly, if I'd met Hadar earlier, I might have considered marrying her." James groaned in exasperation. "When will you grow up and start acting like a dependable husband and future father? You're still the same old playboy, Robert." Robert chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "Oh, James, don't be so dramatic. A little admiration never hurt anyone." James shook his head in disbelief, muttering, "Some things never change." Despite his light-hearted protests, James couldn't help but hope that Robert would finally embrace the responsibilities of his new life. As James left Robert's office, Hadar was called back in. She entered, her demeanor respectful yet slightly nervous. Robert greeted her with a warm smile, gesturing for her to sit. "Hadar," he began, his tone light yet commanding, "I've decided to offer you a position as my personal office cleaner. Your responsibilities will include cleaning my office thoroughly before I arrive each day and ensuring everything remains spotless." He paused, studying her reaction before continuing. "The job comes with several benefits: a one-bedroom apartment for your accommodation, a monthly salary of 60,000 naira to free meals daily, and a weekend allowance. Do you have any question?" Hadar's eyes widened in disbelief. "All that for me, sir?" she stammered, barely able to contain her gratitude. "Thank you so much. I'm truly grateful for this opportunity." Robert smiled, leaning back in his chair. "It's my pleasure, Hadar." But his tone shifted slightly, more serious now. "There's a condition you must agree to before you can access these benefits." Hadar's smile faltered as uncertainty flickered across her face. "What do you mean, sir? I'm willing to do anything to prove myself." Robert frowned slightly, then slid a small card across the desk toward her. "Meet me here at 7 p.m. tonight," he said, his voice steady. Along with the card, he handed her some cash. "This is for your transportation." Ada picked up the card and read the address. Her heart sank as she realized it was for a hotel room. Shocked, her hands trembled slightly as she looked back at him. "Sir," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "I'm a virgin. I can't do this." Robert smirked, leaning forward slightly. "Then you're free to return to your parents with your virginity intact," he said coldly. "But if you want this job and everything that comes with it, this is your ticket in." Tears welled up in Hadar's eyes, and her mind raced with conflicting thoughts. The promise of a better life dangled in front of her. She stood there for a moment, the weight of his words pressing down on her. Robert leaned back, watching her intently, a faint smile on his lips as he waited for her decision. The room fell silent, save for the sound of Ada's unsteady breathing. 2 months later, Hadar was diligently cleaning Robert's office, as she did every morning. However, on this particular day, an overwhelming wave of weakness hit her. Feeling dizzy and lightheaded, she sat down on one of the couches to steady herself. Before she realized it, exhaustion overtook her, and she dozed off. Meanwhile, Robert and his wife, Daniela, had spent the morning at an antenatal appointment, and were now heading to his office together. It was a sunny afternoon, and Daniela, glowing with the radiance of pregnancy, was in high spirits as they stepped into Robert's office. As soon as they entered, their eyes fell on Hadar, fast asleep on the couch. Daniela's brows furrowed in confusion. "Who is this?" she asked sharply, "and what is she doing here?" Robert's expression darkened as he called out, "Hadar, Hadar." Startled awake, Hadar blinked rapidly, sitting up in a panic. She quickly stood as Robert continued. "What's happening here? Why are you sleeping in my office? And why would you keep my pregnant wife standing?" Hadar, her voice trembling with embarrassment, bent slightly in a gesture of apology. "I'm so sorry, sir, madam," she stammered. "I didn't mean to. I felt very weak, and I didn't realize when I fell asleep. Please forgive me. It won't happen again." Daniela's stern expression softened as she took a closer look at the young girl. Hadar's face was pale, her frail figure visibly unwell. With a gentle smile, Daniela reached into her purse and pulled out a few crisp notes. "Here," she said, handing them to Hadar. "Go to the hospital and find out what's wrong with you. You don't look well at all." Tears welled up in Hoda's eyes as she accepted the money. "Thank you, madam," she said, her voice thick with gratitude. "I appreciate your kindness." She hurried out of the office, clutching the money tightly. Robert watched the interaction, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "That was very kind of you, my beautiful wife," he said, wrapping an arm around Daniela. "She's one of our new cleaners. You didn't have to do that." Daniela shook her head gently. "Robert, if she's sick, there are just 2 months of working here. It means she was unwell even before she started. She needs help. No one should have to suffer in silence, especially someone as young as she is." Her compassionate words hung in the air, leaving Robert momentarily thoughtful. As they settled into the office, Robert couldn't help but feel a newfound admiration for his wife. That same evening, Hadar returned to Robert's office, clutching an envelope tightly in her hand. Her steps were hesitant, but her resolve was firm. As she entered, Robert glanced up from his desk and greeted her with a playful smile. "My office wife," he teased lightly. "Have you gone to the hospital yet? What did the doctor say?" Hadar didn't respond immediately. Instead, she placed the envelope on his desk and pushed it toward him. "Sir, please go through it," she said, her voice calm but carrying an undertone of nervousness. Still smiling, Robert took the envelope and began opening it. "What's this about, Hadar?" But his casual demeanor vanished the moment he read the first line of the letter. His eyes widened in disbelief, and he looked up sharply. "You're what?" Hadar's voice was steady, but quiet as she replied, "I'm 8 weeks pregnant, sir." The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of her words settling heavily. Robert leaned back in his chair, his expression shifting from surprise to irritation. "This office is not a place for a pregnant woman," he said coldly. "That means your time working here is over." Hadar straightened her back slightly, meeting his gaze. "Sir, you were responsible for the pregnancy. This child is yours," she said firmly. Robert let out a sharp laugh, shaking his head. "Hadar, I almost forgot. You're from the village. Let me make this clear. I am a legally married man. Whatever you're claiming doesn't exist. We don't exist. So, take care of it however you want, but don't involve me in your story." Hadar's composure cracked as tears streaming down her face. "Please, sir, don't deny me. I have nowhere else to go, and my parents will be devastated. This pregnancy belongs to you. Please, I'm begging you." Robert's expression hardened further as he leaned forward, his voice dripping with disdain. "Hadar, you made your choices, and they have nothing to do with me. I suggest you figure out a solution on your own." Without another word, he picked up his phone and dialed a number. Within moments, 2 security guards entered the office. "Take her out of here," Robert ordered, his tone emotionless, "and make sure I never see her again." The guards moved toward Hadar, who was sobbing uncontrollably. "Please, sir," she cried, clinging to the edge of his desk. "Don't do this to me. Don't abandon me like this." But Robert didn't even look at her. As the guards gently but firmly pulled her to her feet and escorted her out of the office. As the door closed, the silence in the office was deafening. Robert leaned back in his chair, exhaling deeply, but his mind raced with thoughts he wouldn't admit aloud. A few months later, Hadar found herself at the hospital for her antenatal appointment. She sat among other pregnant women as the doctor conducted the day's lesson on prenatal care. Her face bore a mixture of exhaustion and quiet determination as she listened, occasionally placing a hand protectively on her growing belly. Midway through the session, Daniela walked into the room, her radiant presence drawing the attention of the women. Her smile was warm but slightly tired as she joined the group. Ada immediately recognized her and greeted her with a friendly yet tentative smile. "Welcome, madam," Hadar said politely, her tone respectful. "How are you today? You're a little late. I hope everything is okay." Daniela, unable to place Hadar's face, returned the greeting with a gracious nod. "I'm fine, thank you," she replied. "I had a flat tire on my way here, which delayed me. But I'm glad to be here now, and how are you?" Hadar hesitated, her eyes dropping slightly before she responded. "I'm fine, madam, but—" She took a deep breath, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm struggling. I haven't eaten properly in days, and I'm finding it hard to take care of myself. Please, if you could help me with a little money, I'd be so grateful. Anything would go a long way." Daniela stared at her, her brows furrowing as she studied Hadar's pale face and thin frame, though she still didn't recognize her. Daniela's natural compassion took over. She reached into her purse and handed Ada some cash. "Please take this," Daniela said softly. "It's not much, but I hope it helps for now. Next time, I'll bring some food and more money for you." Tears filled Hadar's eyes as she accepted the money. "Thank you so much, madam," she said, her voice filled with genuine gratitude. "I truly appreciate your kindness." From that day forward, a bond began to form between the two women. Every time they met at the antenatal clinic, Daniela would bring Ada money, food, or other essentials to help her through her difficult time. Hadar's heart swelled with gratitude for Daniela's selflessness, while Daniela, unaware of the deeper connection between them, felt a sense of fulfillment in supporting a fellow expectant mother. A few weeks later, Daniela gave birth to a beautiful baby boy at the hospital. The delivery went smoothly, but as the nurse handed the newborn to Daniela, she noticed something unusual. A prominent injury on the baby's arm. Startled, Daniela gasped. "Doctor," she called out urgently, her voice trembling. "What is this mark on my baby's arm?" The doctor quickly approached, examining the injury with a calm demeanor. Roberts, who had been pacing the room in excitement, froze and turned toward the commotion. He hurried to Daniela's side, his expression filled with concern. "What's wrong? What happened?" Roberts asked, leaning in to inspect the mark. Daniela's voice wavered. "There's an injury on his arm. How could this happen?" The doctor adjusted his glasses and examined the baby thoroughly. "I understand your concerns," he said reassuringly. "This appears to be a minor surface abrasion, possibly caused during delivery. I assure you, it's nothing serious. The baby is healthy, and this will heal in no time with proper care." Roberts frowned, his protective instincts kicking in. "Are you sure about this, doctor? This is my son we're talking about. I don't want to take any chances." The doctor nodded confidently. "Mr. Roberts, I completely understand your worrying, but I have seen cases like this before. We'll apply a topical ointment to aid healing, and I'll personally monitor the recovery. Your son is perfectly fine." Daniela, still uneasy, cradled the baby closer, her eyes filled with worrying. "Are you absolutely certain? He's so tiny. I don't want him to suffer." "I promise you," the doctor replied gently, "the mark will fade as his skin heals. It's purely superficial and won't affect his health or development in any way." Reassured, but still slightly anxious, Roberts and Daniela decided to trust the doctor's expertise. They left the hospital 3 days later, with their newborn son, vowing to keep a close eye on his condition. Despite the doctor's assurances, Daniela couldn't shake a lingering feeling of unease, silently praying for her son's swift recovery. 3 years later, a frail-looking elderly woman sat patiently outside the gates of Robert and Daniela's grand house. Her worn clothing told a story of hardship, but her eyes carried a glimmer of hope. When the gates finally opened, and Daniela stepped out to address her, the woman quickly knelt on the ground, her voice trembling with desperation. "Please, madam," she pleaded, "help me with any type of job. I'm willing to do anything, clean, wash, anything, just to earn something for my upkeep. I really need this." Daniela regarded the woman with a sigh, her heart ached, but she couldn't ignore the woman's disheveled appearance. "I'm sorry," Daniela began gently, "there's no job I can offer you right now. I can't allow you to handle the cooking. You're too unkempt for such responsibilities. Cleanliness is very important to us." The woman's eyes filled with tears as she clasped her hands together in a gesture of supplication. "Please, madam," she begged, "I'll do my best to improve my appearance. I can clean the house, wash clothes, anything you need, just give me a chance." After a moment's hesitation, Daniela relented. "This is difficult for me," she admitted. "We have zero tolerance for dirt in this household. But try to clean yourself up and come back tomorrow. Let's see what we can do." The following day, the woman returned, her appearance much improved. She had managed to wash and press her clothes, her hair was combed, and she carried herself with newfound dignity. Daniela invited her inside, and after a brief discussion with Robert, they decided to give her a chance. "We'll employ you as a cleaner," Robert said kindly. "You'll be responsible for washing, cleaning, and keeping the house in order. We can also arrange for you to stay here in the boys' quarters to make things easier for you. Would that work for you?" The woman's eyes lit up with gratitude, but her voice was hesitant as she replied, "Thank you so much, sir, madam. I deeply appreciate your kindness. But I have a grandchild. She's only 3 years old, and her mother, my daughter, died during childbirth. I'm the only one taking care of her." Daniela's face softened immediately. "Oh, I see," she said, her tone warm and understanding. "That's not a problem. Let her come with you. We'd be happy to have both of you here. A child's laughter is always welcome in our home." The woman's tears flowed freely, overwhelmed by their generosity. Thank you so much," she said, her voice breaking. "You've given me hope when I thought all was lost." That day marked a new beginning for the woman and her young grandchild. A year later, tension brewed in the otherwise harmonious home of Daniela and Robert. They were locked in a heated debate in their living room over the education of Sharon, the granddaughter of their cleaner, Madame Agnes. Daniela's voice was firm, but calm as she expressed her opinion. "Robert, raising Sharon alongside George shouldn't be an issue for us. She's just a child, and giving her a good education is the least we can do. I still believe we should enroll her in the same school as George. It's a good environment, and she deserves the best." Robert, however, was visibly agitated. His voice rose as he replied, "Daniela, sending Sharon to school isn't the problem. I'm not against her education, but enrolling her in the same school as George, that's where I draw the line, and I won't change my mind. Our son's education comes first, and I won't complicate matters by mixing family and charity like this." Daniela's heart sank at his unyielding stance. She took a deep breath, trying to de-escalate the situation. "Robert," she said softly, "this isn't about complicating things. It's about doing what's right. But if you're this adamant, I won't push further. We shouldn't let this disagreement drive a wedge between us. Let's find a solution that works for everyone." The next day, Daniela went into the kitchen to meet Madame Agnes to discuss their decision. As Madame Agnes stood nervously, Daniela explained, "We've decided to send Sharon to school. It may not be George's school, but it's a good institution that will provide her with a solid education." Madame Onez's face lit up with pure joy. She clasped her hands together, tears brimming in her eyes. "Oh, madam," she exclaimed, "you've wiped away my tears and given my granddaughter a chance at a better life. God bless you and your family abundantly for this kindness. I'll never forget what you've done for us." Daniela smiled warmly, touched by the woman's gratitude. "It's the least we can do, Agnes. Sharon is a bright child, and she deserves a chance to shine." George and Sharon had become inseparable over time, much to Robert's dismay. Despite his efforts to keep them apart, the bond between the two children only seemed to grow stronger. One sunny Saturday afternoon, their laughter echoed through the compound as they played on the playground. George, in his excitement, missed a step and tumbled to the ground. His cry of pain filled the air, drawing Robert's attention. Alarmed, he rushed out to the playground, only to find Sharon kneeling beside George, helping him to his feet while murmuring softly, "I'm sorry, George, you'll be okay." The sight enraged Robert. Without a second thought, he marched over and yanked Sharon's hands away from his son. His voice was sharp and filled with contempt as he said, "Don't you ever put your stinking hands on my son again. Stay with your grandmother where you belong. This is my son's house, and he doesn't need you meddling in his life. Let him enjoy his father's wealth without interference." Sharon's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. She turned and ran as fast as her small legs could carry her to the safety of Madame Onez's room. Her grandmother, who had been taking a nap, was startled awake by the sound of Sharon's sobs. Sitting up quickly, she pulled Sharon into her arms. "Sharon, what's wrong? What happened?" Madame Agnes asked, her voice filled with concern. Through her tears, Sharon recounted the entire incident, her voice trembling. "Grandma, Dad hates me. He doesn't like me at all. He doesn't want me near George or anyone else in this house. What did I do wrong?" Madame Agnes' heart broke at the sight of her granddaughter's distress. She held Sharon tightly, stroking her hair in an attempt to comfort her. "My dear Sharon," she said gently, "don't let this make you sad. You've done nothing wrong. Sometimes, people act out of anger or misunderstanding, but I promise you, everything will be fine. You are a wonderful child, and no one can take that away from you." Though Sharon's tears continued to fall, the warmth of her grandmother's embrace gave her a small sense of comfort. 15 years had passed, and the once young George and Sharon were now proud graduates. One fateful evening, as everyone settled back at home, Madame Agnes approached Daniela with a warm but resolute smile. "Daniela," she began, "it's time for me to leave. Sharon has secured a small apartment for herself, and I will move in with her. I've been here long enough, and I believe it's time for me to make room for your family." Daniela's eyes filled with gratitude as she replied, "Madame Agnes, you've been more than just a helper in this house, you've been family. We are so grateful for everything you've done, especially for raising Sharon to be such a remarkable young woman." Robert, standing nearby, nodded and said, "Madame Agnes, before you go, let us give you something to start afresh." He handed her an envelope containing money. "Use this to start a small business or whatever you need. It's the least we can do to thank you for all the years you've spent with us." Overcome with emotion, Madame Agnes held the envelope tightly and replied, "Thank you both so much. You've not only helped my granddaughter get an education, but you've also given her a future. God bless you and your family." In the weeks that followed, life took different paths for George and Sharon. George, who had studied business management abroad, returned to join his father's company as the executive director. He quickly gained respect for his innovative ideas and leadership skills, becoming a vital part of the company's success. Sharon, on the other hand, pursued her passion for teaching. After completing her studies at the College of Education, she secured a job as a teacher in a public school. Although her salary was modest, she found immense fulfillment in shaping the minds of her young students. Despite their different career paths and the years spent apart during their studies, the bond between George and Sharon only grew stronger. They remained each other's confidants and closest friends, sharing their joys and challenges. Even as George managed the high-pressure demands of his corporate role, he made time for Sharon, often visiting her at her modest apartment or calling her late at night to discuss life. Similarly, Sharon would find moments in her busy teaching schedule to check on George, offering words of encouragement and advice. One fateful day, George sat with his mother, Daniela, in the living room, his expression serious yet hopeful. "Mom," he began, "I have something important to discuss with you." Daniela looked up from the magazine she was reading. "What is it, George?" she asked, sensing the weight in his tone. Taking a deep breath, George said, "I've made up my mind. I want to marry Sharon. No woman compares to her. I love her with all my heart, and I can't imagine my life without her." Daniela froze, her mind racing. She placed the magazine aside and leaned forward. "George," she said carefully, "Sharon is a wonderful girl. She's kind, intelligent, and has been a part of our lives for so long." But her voice trailed off as she searched for the right words. "But what, Mom?" George pressed, his brows furrowed. "She's not of our social class," Daniela said bluntly. "You know how much your father values status, and how he would never approve of something that could lower our standing. Marrying Sharon would bring unnecessary complications. Why not consider someone from a wealthy family? Someone who understands the kind of life we've built for you and can easily adapt to it." George shook his head firmly. "Mom, I've heard this argument before, but it doesn't change how I feel. Sharon is the only woman I can ever see myself with. She's not just a part of my life. She's my life. Please, Mom, I'm begging you to help make this a reality. I need your support." Daniela sighed, torn between her son's happiness and her loyalty to her husband's principles. She said nothing more, but her troubled expression lingered long after George had left the room. A few days later, Sharon sat beside Madame Agnes in their modest living room, her face glowing with happiness. She hesitated for a moment before breaking the news. "Grandma," she began softly, "there's something I need to tell you. George and I have realized that we can't live without each other. He proposed to me yesterday, and I said yes." Madame Agnes' eyes widened in shock. "What?" she exclaimed, sitting upright. "Sharon, that can never happen. You and George cannot get married. Never, not while I'm alive." Sharon stared at her grandmother, stunned by her reaction. "But, Grandma, why?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You know how close we are. We've been best friends since childhood. We love each other deeply and want to build a life together. Please, don't say no." Madame Agnes' voice grew stern. "Sharon, listen to me. This cannot happen. There are things you don't understand, and it's better left that way. Don't ever bring this up with me again. My answer is final. No." Tears welled up in Sharon's eyes as she looked at her grandmother, searching for any sign of compromise. "Grandma, you've never denied me anything before. And now, of all things, you're denying me the one thing that truly matters to me. Please, I'm begging you, don't say no." But Madame Agnes shook her head firmly. "It's for the best, Sharon," she said, rising to her feet. "This discussion is over." Without another word, she walked out of the room, leaving Sharon heartbroken and confused. Sharon sat in silence, tears streaming down her face, as the weight of her grandmother's refusal sank in. A few weeks later, George sat on the bench at their usual park, running his hands through his hair as he waited for Sharon. When she arrived, her face mirrored her frustration. They exchanged tired smiles before Sharon broke the silence. "George," she began, her voice heavy with emotion, "I just don't understand. What amazes me the most is how adamantly my grandma opposes our relationship. She's never acted like this before." George nodded thoughtfully, his jaw clenched. "It surprised me too. Maybe she's afraid of what my father might think or do. But let me tell you this, my mom is on our side, and the way she's handling the situation, I believe my dad will eventually have no choice but to give his full support." Sharon's eyes widened in disbelief. "Your dad? Do you really think he could come around? If that happens, I think I know how to get my grandma's approval too, and if your father supports us, she have no reason to hold back." A flicker of hope ignited between them, and George reached out to hold Sharon's hand. "Sharon, this relationship, what we have, it's worth fighting for. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this happen. Are you with me?" Sharon's lips curled into a soft smile as she nodded. "Of course, George, I feel the same way. We've come too far to let anything tear us apart now. We'll fight for this, together." 6 months later, the Grand Hall was abuzz with excitement, filled to capacity with guests who had come to witness the union of George and Sharon. Robert and Daniela sat in the front row, their faces beaming with pride and joy. However, as Daniela scanned the crowd, a look of concern crossed her face. "Roberts," she whispered, leaning closer to her husband, "Agnes isn't here. Sharon's grandmother's seat is empty. I wonder what's keeping her." Roberts placed a reassuring hand on her arm. "Don't worry, Daniela. She might have been delayed by something urgent. I'm sure she'll be here soon." Just as the priest prepared to officiate the marriage, a murmur rippled through the hall. The guests' attention shifted to the entrance, where a strikingly elegant woman, dressed in a white wedding gown, began walking confidently down the aisle. Gasps echoed as everyone turned to watch her approach. The priest paused mid-sentence, visibly startled by the unexpected arrival. He glanced at the couple at the altar, unsure of what to do, before stepping aside to allow the woman to ascend the podium. She leaned toward him, whispered something in his ear. The priest straightened himself and addressed the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention? I would like to call Mr. Roberts to the podium." The hall fell into an uneasy silence. Daniela's heart sank as she turned to Roberts. "Who is she, Roberts? What is happening? Is she trying to disrupt our son's wedding?" Roberts, visibly puzzled, shook his head. "I don't know, Daniela. Let me speak with the priest and figure this out." George and Sharon clutched each other's hands tightly, their faces pale with confusion and dread. Robert stepped onto the stage, his brow furrowed in confusion, as he faced the mysterious woman. She lifted her veil, and smiled. Her voice rang out with a mix of emotion and defiance. "This wedding is not meant to happen," she declared, her voice commanding attention. "For years, I have lived a life of pain, a life shaped by lies, all for this very moment." She turned to Roberts, pointing an accusatory finger at him. "This man," she continued, her voice trembling with anger, "deflowered me and left me pregnant. When I confronted him, he denied me and tried to erase my existence, tried to eliminate me to protect himself. But I survived, and I swore to take my revenge." The woman's voice grew firmer. "In my search for justice, I uncovered the truth. Roberts never legally married his wife. He only had a traditional ceremony because he feared that, if he made it legal, she could lay claim to his wealth. This revelation gave me the leverage I needed to plan my revenge. The crowd erupted into murmurs as all eyes turned to Roberts, who stood motionless, his face a mask of shock and panic. The first step in my plan was to exchange the children at birth, she began, her eyes locked on Roberts. I begged the doctor to induce my labor early, even though it was dangerous for me and my baby. I needed my child to have access to the wealth and privileges of his father's house. To ensure proof of identity, I made a deep mark on my son's arm, one that matches the identical scar on my own. This scar is my evidence, Roberts. The child you have raised as your heir is mine. The room filled with a mix of gasps and whispers as her words sank in. She continued, her voice unwavering. 3 years later, I disguised myself as an old woman and brought Sharon to your house, claiming she was my granddaughter. You treated her like an outsider, Roberts, never knowing she was your biological daughter. My stay with you as a cleaner wasn't out of desperation, it was a calculated decision. I wanted to ensure my son grew up in comfort, and to keep a close eye on him to protect his future. Daniela, who had been listening in stunned silence, clutched her chest and muttered, "No, this can't be." The woman turned to face her directly, her expression both sorrowful and defiant. Daniela, while you traveled abroad for your professional program, I took my plan to the next level. I gained access to the original documents of all the estates, businesses, and properties, both at home and abroad. I manipulated Roberts into signing a document that transferred all his wealth to the mother of his biological son. Do you remember, Roberts? She asked, turning her piercing gaze back to him. Do you remember when your lawyer called to confirm if you were sure about signing those documents, and you casually said yes? That was my doing. I manipulated you every step of the way. The crowd was stunned into silence, the enormity of her confession settling heavily over the room. My name is Hardar, she declared, her voice ringing with finality, and I have come from my revenge. As we speak, I have already served all your employees their termination letters, asking them to reapply, as they wish to work under the new leadership, my leadership. You, Roberts, are to vacate your house today. I am now the legal owner of all your estates, businesses, and properties. Gasps echoed through the hall as guests turned to look at Roberts, whose face had turned pale. George and Sharon stared at each other in disbelief, their plans to build a life together suddenly thrown into chaos. Daniela, overcome with emotion, rose from her seat and quietly exited the hall, tears streaming down her face. Roberts, however, fell to his knees before Hardar. Hardar, please, he begged, his voice cracking. I was young and foolish. I made terrible mistakes, but I never meant to hurt you like this. Please, I'm begging you for forgiveness and a second chance. Don't do this to my family. Hardar looked down at him, her expression cold and unyielding. You had your chance, Roberts, she said. When I told you I was carrying your child and begging for help, you turned me away. You tried to erase me, but I survived. This is the price of your choices. The hall was silent except for Robert's sobs and the murmurs of the shocked guests. Sharon clutched George's arm tightly, both unsure of what to do. The dream wedding had turned into a nightmare of exposed lies, betrayal, and vengeance. Hadar stepped away from the podium, her head held high. She walked out of the hall, leaving behind a stunned crowd. When she arrived at Robert's home, the atmosphere was heavy with tension. To her shock, she found Daniela, packing her belongings into a suitcase. Her face was pale but resolute. Hardar, now calm and composed, walked over and gently placed her hand on Daniela's. Daniela, stop, she said softly. I am not sending you out of your house. This is your home, and you are a good woman, so generous, so kind, and so humble. I never intended to hurt you. Daniela looked up at her, her eyes brimming with tears. But everything has changed, Ada, she whispered. This no longer feels like my home. I don't even know who I am in all of this. Hadar knelt beside her and held her hand firmly. Listen to me, she said, her voice filled with emotion. I didn't come here to take your place. I came to teach Roberts a lesson, a painful lesson about the consequences of hurting a woman. I wanted him to see how dangerous it is to betray, abandon, and underestimate the strength of a woman's resolve. Daniela blinked, her tears spilling over. But why me? Why us? I never hurt you. I know you didn't, Hadar replied, her voice breaking slightly. In fact, you've been nothing but kind, not just to me, but to Sharon as well. Hadar paused for a moment before continuing. We are both mothers to Robert's children. That is a bond that ties us in ways neither of us can escape. Instead of tearing each other down, we need to come together, sit down, and plan a new way forward. Our children deserve stability and love. You deserve peace, and I deserve closure. For the first time that day, the overwhelming weight of the situation seemed to lift, leaving behind a fragile hope for understanding and unity. Hadar took full charge of Robert's properties and wealth, managing his vast estate with precision and authority. She chose to settle in one of his most luxurious homes in the United Kingdom, where she lived a life of comfort and independence. Back at their family home, Roberts and Daniela continued to live together as husband and wife, attempting to rebuild their relationship amidst the chaos that had unfolded. George and Sharon, now fully aware of the tangled history that connected their families, chose to live with Daniela and Roberts as siblings. Roberts, on the other hand, lived with deep regret for his years of reckless behavior and mistreatment of women. The weight of his actions bore heavily on him, and he often reflected on the pain he had caused, not only to Hadar and Daniela, but also to his children. He vowed to become a better man, using his remaining years to atone for his mistakes, and to ensure his family never experienced such turmoil again.
Hello, besties. If you were Hadar, would you have done things differently? If you were Daniela, would you have accepted everything as fate? Please share your thoughts in the comments section and subscribe to this channel. And remember, life can be complex. There are more interesting stories to watch on this channel. Please check the description below for the links.
Thanks so much for watching. God bless you. I love you all.